A stark warning from Doug Ford tonight. 500,000 jobs in Ontario could be lost if Donald Trump follows through on his promise to impose devastating tariffs.
Liberal leadership race narrows. Christy Clark, François-Philippe Champagne announcing they're out. More on who's jumping in.
And home invasions, spa robberies, gun violence. York Regional Police highlight their top priorities as the police service launches Crime Stoppers Month.
This is Live at 5. Good evening. I'm Phil Perkins.
And I'm Lena Latifat. Thank you for joining us here on Live at 5. 500,000 jobs. That's what Premier Doug Ford says Donald Trump's proposed tariffs could cost Ontario. He met with Federal Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc at Queen's Park today.
That's where we find CP24's Melissa Duggan. What was discussed? What was shared?
Yeah, so Phil, a couple of major updates coming from Ford and from Trump and tariffs, that whole big subject, and more of it on the way tomorrow. First off, we heard from Dominic LeBlanc, the federal finance minister, this afternoon, who was standing next to Premier Doug Ford. They had a news conference after they met behind closed doors. One of the things they talked about, the border security plan. And something they were asked about afterwards, what would the plan be? What kind of retaliation steps could be taken if Donald Trump, once inaugurated as U.S. president come Monday, if that happens, that he imposes a 25% tariff on Canadian goods head into the U.S., what could we expect from Canada? Both of them saying they will not speculate at this time. But I do want to share what they are saying. Have a listen.
We just had a really, really positive meeting talking about tariffs, talking about border security. I saw the plan for border security. It's phenomenal. As I said to Minister LeBlanc, have Mr. McGuinty get out there and start promoting it because it is a solid plan. We look forward to sitting down with all the premiers tomorrow.
People need to know that we'll work together, as we always have, with the provinces and territories to support businesses and workers. This is a circumstance that Canadian industry and Canadian workers didn't create. If the American government takes this decision, our obligation is to work together and to support the economy of the country, but also to respond in a firm, unified way. This isn't good for the American economy either.
Earlier in the day, we also heard from Ford. He said that Ontario could see the loss of 500,000 jobs if Trump's tariffs do come into effect. He's not saying exactly which sectors those jobs would come from, but we are getting a reaction to this possibility from the opposition. We're hearing from Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie. She's saying those numbers are inflated. And she's also pointing to the political reasons why Ford might be floating that. We have been hearing from Ford in recent days talking about a mandate that he would need if these tariffs are put in place for an infusion of cash into the Ontario economy. He says billions of dollars would be needed, and he would need a vote to go ahead, talking to the people of Ontario to get the okay for that spending. That would mean an early election here in Ontario. And we're hearing from the opposition leaders saying they're ready to cooperate, to work together with Ford in the face of this tariff threat. They're saying this election is not needed. Now, looking ahead to tomorrow, Ford heading to Ottawa along with the other premiers across Canada. They are talking Trump, they are talking tariffs, and Canada's plan if those tariffs do come into place. Back to you.
All right. Melissa Duggan live at Queen's Park for us, standing by with the very latest. Thanks, Melissa. Well, the race to become the next federal Liberal leader has narrowed after two potential candidates announced today they will not be entering the contest.
Nope. Let's bring in CP24's Beatrice Vaisman for the latest developments there. So, yeah, who's in, who's out?
Question, Phil and Lena, right now the list as to who's out is actually longer than who is in, but we know that list is going to continue to grow as some of the high-profile candidates are expected to announce their intention to replace Justin Trudeau in the coming days. So let's start with Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne. He was out here, right here in the city of Toronto today, and he essentially said, despite, getting a lot of support from Quebec, and he serves, by the way, as an MP in former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien's riding, that he would be focusing boosting his efforts on protecting Canadian businesses and Canadians as a whole, considering this looming threat of tariffs that Melissa was just talking about coming from the U.S. president-elect. So here's a bit of what we heard from François-Philippe Champagne earlier today.
This is a big day, and it was a very tough decision. But one thing I can say to you and all Canadians who are watching, I'll be fighting every single day for Canada in whatever capacity, because that's the country I love. This is the country we love. And this, for me, is the country of the 21st century.
We know that she was talking about former BC.
She's just
Premier
around the corner in the newsroom.
Christy Clark announcing that she too is out. We're going to wrap up what Beatrice, I'm assuming, was going to say.
Yeah.
Lots of speculation about Chrystia Freeland. When will she jump in? She's waiting for Donald Trump's inauguration. And we're also hearing reports that Mark Carney is going to announce that he is in very soon. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, he was on the Daily Show yesterday. He was good.
He was.
Okay.
And that was Beatrice Faisman reporting live for us. Thank you, Beatrice. We'll check in soon. Meantime, the Prime Minister is hosting a cabinet retreat beginning on President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration day.
The retreat in Quebec on January 20th and 21st is expected to focus on the looming tariff threats, protecting Canadians' interests, and strengthening its relationship with the U.S. Trump has threatened these major tariffs, 25% over what he says is an issue with illegal drugs and migrants entering the U.S. from Canada, prompting the Trudeau government to make a $1.3 billion investment in border security. Now, a statement from Prime Minister Trudeau reads in part, quote, with the threat of tariffs from the incoming United States administration, Team Canada will use expanded capabilities to strengthen Canada's relationship with the U.S., protect Canadian investment and jobs, and make unequivocally clear the mutually beneficial relationship our two countries share.
All right, switching gears, 5:06 -7 tonight. Let's get a check on that drive home. Our traffic specialist, Heather Seaman, standing by with more on your drive. Hey, Heather.
Hi there. It's a busy drive. I'm trying to keep on top of everything. Let's go straight to the cameras. Just spotted this issue here. It's the 401 westbound on-ramp at Brock Road in Pickering. It's a crash that's blocking all lanes. Actually, look, you can see that tractor trailer is getting through. So they're not blocking all lanes, but emergency crews on scene. Just a visual distraction right now. So it looks like traffic is getting by. We had some earlier issues westbound 401 collectors at Avenue Road, a crash investigation. That cleared moments ago. Still a busy drive. Busy across the 401 overall. The 401 westbound at Dixon Martin Grove, a disabled vehicle that was blocking lanes, that has cleared. But again, still a busy drive through that stretch. Don Valley Parkway, that is heavy from Millwood to north of Lawrence. And we're seeing the typical volume on the westbound Gardner from about York Street to west of Bathurst. Off the major routes, we still have police activity at Tommy Thompson Park. That's it. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Heather. Well, opponents of the province's plan to build a spa at Ontario Place are raising new concerns about pollution, noting a proposed sewer outlet could lead to water contamination.
The recent estimates from the province's Auditor General say redeveloping Ontario Place will now cost $2.2 billion.
Sometimes when there's large rainfall, that combined sewage will be emptying into this closed water space right behind us here at Ontario Place and down. It means all of the amenities, all of the public access to the beach, Sunnyside Beach, one of the most popular beaches in the city, could be polluted from dumping raw sewage in behind this breakwater.
Think about this. Birds do not foul their own nests. The 1912 breakwater that we see to the west was designed for public health, welfare, and safety of the citizens of Toronto who could not afford to go to the Muskokas. So here we have a major public recreation waterway, one of Toronto's major beaches, being befouled by sewage water, especially prevalent now with global warming and the intense rainfalls we're experiencing.
The report also found the bidding process for the Thermos Spa lacked accountability and transparency.
It is 5:09. Feels like -17. You're watching Live at 5.
Coming up after the break, we take you to Markham, where an investigation is underway into a hate-motivated break and enter. We're going to hear from the community. right, lots of talk about the race to become the next federal Liberal leader. The list of people not running is actually longer than the list of people who are running.
I'm actually surprised by some of the people who are running. For more on this, Beatrice Vason back in the newsroom.
Who are you surprised about, Phil?
Karina Gold. I can't believe she's
sure.
doing that.
Yeah, I mean, Government House Leader Karina Gold, just 37 years old. She represents Burlington. She says she's going to run. That's, maybe one of the dark horses in this race. Let's tell you who's not running. We told you about François-Philippe Champagne, the industry minister. Today he was here in Toronto saying he's out. Also out, former BC Premier Christy Clark. She's saying she's not going to be seeking to replace Justin Trudeau. In a letter to reporters saying there's not enough, not to reporters, to supporters, she says she's not going to have enough time to mount a successful campaign, saying she hasn't had enough time to improve her French, also to connect with Francophone Canadians. Plus, there was a bit of a blunder last week where she said she's never held a membership to the Conservative Party of Canada. That simply was not true because we know she supported Jean Charest, who was seeking leadership after Aaron O'Toole stepped down. So blunder after blunder, Christy Clark is now out. Let's tell you who's in as the rumor mill continues to churn. And we know the former Bank of Canada Governor, Mark Carney. There's been lots of speculation about when he was going to announce. We are now hearing he's going to be announcing in Edmonton on Thursday. That's where he grew up. He went to high school there before he embarked over to Harvard and Oxford universities and then launched his career in finance, becoming eventually the Bank of Canada Governor. He was on a late night talk show last night, though, kind of pitching himself as the outsider who's here to help Canada. And here's what he had to say.
You got to have some shared values. You got to be able to predict how the other is going to behave. So it's not just a series of transactions.
Right.
Look, we can do a series of transactions. We're fine. We're in a strong position. You want to do a series of deals, we can do that.
Yeah.
What's much better is to look at everything we've had, John, together. And we could just build on it.
You were just about to lean into look, man, if it's late and you're drunk, you can call us. It's cool.
Yeah,
but I would rather we mean something to each other.
Yeah.
So that we get something out of this together.
Yeah, like Sunday afternoon in the park.
That's what I'm talking about.
And not a huge surprise here either. Chrystia Freeland, who helped push the Prime Minister out with her scathing resignation in December, set to launch her campaign before Donald Trump's inauguration. By the way, that's coming up on Monday. She says her first pitch to voters is going to be a plan dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs in this looming trade war between Canada and the U.S. And then, of course, we mentioned Government House Leader Karina Gold. She's preparing to put her name forward. She thinks she can be a voice for young Liberals. She says she's going to have to raise, certainly pedal to the metal, this $350,000 required for the entry fee. And then a short runway after that. The Liberal leader will be chosen in March. Then the House comes back. And then by all intents and purposes, it looks like there's going to be a no confidence vote. And then off to a federal election we all go. Back to you.
All right. Short runway indeed. Beatrice Vason live in our newsroom. Thanks, Bea. Well, a significant police presence at Tommy Thompson Park tonight for a controlled detonation after explosive materials were found in a storage unit.
Police say a controlled detonation will be conducted at some point, but there is no risk to public safety. The explosive disposal unit and hazmat team are at the park. It's unclear what kind of explosives that they're talking about, but they were discovered in a storage locker on Bermondsey Avenue this morning.
York Regional Police, they're marking Crime Stoppers Month by highlighting some of their top priorities cases today.
Yeah, for a closer look at this, let's go live now. CP24 crime analyst Steve Ryan, who's in York Region tonight. And you've used Crime Stoppers in the past.
I have. It's a very successful tool for law enforcement. And it started in 1976. A Canadian-born Albuquerque, New Mexico detective came up with the idea almost 5 decades ago because he was trying to solve a murder at a gas bar and he had no leads. So he came up with this anonymous phone calls for information, plus a financial reward as well if the information was accurate. And to this day, Crime Stoppers is a very effective program. So it is Crime Stoppers Month, and we heard from York Regional Police today. They kicked off Crime Stoppers Month talking about a home invasion in Vaughan and some robberies in spas throughout York Region. They're asking for the public's assistance in solving these cases, and Crime Stoppers is a very effective way to get some really precious information that can help you with an investigation. Here's more from Chief McSween, who we heard from earlier today at York Regional Police Headquarters. Take a listen.
This year's theme of Crime Stoppers Month is empowering through education, preventing through action. At York Regional Police, we've been spreading the message that crime prevention is a shared responsibility. Our officers work tirelessly to protect and serve all communities in York Region, but they can't do it alone. That's why York Regional Police continues to strengthen our community partnerships, work with youth, and build bonds with other organizations in our region.
Never in the history of Crime Stoppers has a person's identity been made available. The courts have even said that Crime Stoppers information can remain anonymous. So that is some relief for those who may be concerned about getting involved in a case. If you have information, you provide it to the police, you'll get an identifying number. If you do get money, you just give that number to the bank and they'll match it up with your cash. So there's no concern about anonymity. If that helps. So back to you.
All right, Steve Ryan, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. Okay, well, with that, still no arrests in a hate-motivated break-and-enter in Markham.
Police say these suspects broke into a commercial unit near Yonge and Doncaster early Friday morning. They vandalized the property, causing significant damage, and left behind anti-Semitic graffiti.
For the last 15 months, since October 7th, we have seen a drastic increase in anti-Semitism here in Toronto. And it is really terrifying for members of the Jewish community. We are completely unsettled. We need people to stand with us. We need to call it out. We need all levels of government to stand with us and to do something about it, because we cannot live as Canadians knowing that we can be victim to things like this.
If you recognize either of those suspects, police would like to speak with you.
It's 5:18 now, -8. You're watching Live at 5.
Coming up, Royal LePage is out with new housing numbers. We'll tell you about the latest trends in the GTA. Prices going up, prices going down, but in what sector?
Well, a day after the city unveiled its proposed budget for 2025, Mayor Olivia Chow was on News Talk 1010 today defending that 6.9% property tax increase.
Times are tough for a lot of people. Some people are a few paychecks away from being evicted.
Right.
So I focused the budget very much on making life affordable for folks, whether it's building more housing, supporting tenants, helping them not get renovated. And also because so many people are using food banks, like 1 in 10, and a third of them are kids. And you can't learn if you are hungry, right? So that's why there are food in schools, good food in schools, more thousands of kids, and also in summer camp, because I hear from kids, summer camp counselors that said they are just hungry during the day. And I said, what?
Well, CTV political commentator Scott Reed thinks Mayor Chow is looking ahead to the next municipal election.
There's a plan here, and we'll see if it works. And the plan isn't for this year, it's for next year, and it's about her reelection. So she starts with a 10% tax last year. Now she brings it down to, say, a hike of 6%. Probably after they get done negotiations, it's about 5%. Next year is when she'll then say, because of my smart, tough action, we now have right-sized our deficit and our budget, and we can just stay at the rate of inflation. She'll campaign on that and position herself as someone that fought for and restored the integrity of public services.
Now, most of the increase, 5.4%, is for the operating budget. The remaining 1.5% goes to the City Building Fund, which supports critical infrastructure projects. The increase works out to about an extra $268 a year for the average home, with an assessed value of nearly $700,000. In addition to this, City Council has already approved a 3.75% interim increase in water and garbage rates. The proposed budget is expected to go before Council next month.
All right, let's talk about real estate right now. New data from Royal LePage shows that the aggregate price of a home in Toronto decreased year over year in the fourth quarter of last year.
The company's house price survey found the aggregate price of a home in the city decreased by 1.7% to just under $1.1 million. Now, the condo market seems to be partly responsible here, with the median price of a condo down 2.7% to just over $680,000, while the median price of a single-family detached home was up 1.2% to more than $1.6 million. We spoke to Royal LePage CEO Phil Soper about this market.
It's really a condo story. The detached section is attracting lots of interest, detached section in the fourth quarter and into the new year. But we have a substantial supply of condos. You could call it a temporary oversupply, and that's pulling overall or keeping house prices overall from appreciating at the rate they should be given the amount of activity in the market. We finished the year with sharply higher activity.
In the GTA, the aggregate price of a home increased 2.3% year over year to $1.14 million.
Well, a group is encouraging Ontarians to donate the $200 rebate they'll be getting from the province to a charity of their choice.
Ford government says the rebate is meant to help with the cost of living. A total of $3 billion is being sent out. A group that set up the website, $200.ca, says that money can go a long way for the collective good. They use the example of a food bank that can stretch $200 to buy 400 meals. People willing to donate all or part of their rebate can go to the website to make a pledge as a way of tracking the impact.
Just about 5:25, -8 in the city. You're watching Live at 5 on Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
When we come back, fans of Canada's first WNBA team can now buy Toronto Tempo merch. Let's take a look at it. I'll give you my score.
Well, Toronto Tempo gear is now officially on the market.
Yeah, Canada's first WNBA team. If you're a fan, you could buy a wide range of goods featuring the Tempo logo and the team's signature colors. It's called Hydrogen Blue and Bordeaux. I hope they're not drinking on the job. The team's official jersey hasn't been unveiled just yet. We're expecting to get a closer look at that once we get to the inaugural season. The team's chief marketing officer joined us live this morning to talk about the launch.
The number one question we've had is, when can I get my hands on merch? We officially launched our shop this morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. So if you go to shop.torontotempo.com, you can purchase merch. We have everything from hats to hoodies to baby gear, candles, planters. So there's really something for everyone available there.
And Toronto Tempo merch can be purchased online or in a few retail stores, including Makeway, Sport Check, and Real Sports.
They didn't give us any free merch.
I know. That would have been nice.
That would have been smart.
Never
would have
too
been
late.
smart marketing. Just saying. It's 5:28. Feels like -17. You're watching Live at 5.
Well, coming up, we'll have more on the most wanted suspects in York Region as police mark Crime Stoppers Month.
Home invasions, spa robberies, and gun violence. York Regional Police highlighting their top priorities as the police service launches Crime Stoppers Month.
And a stark warning from Doug Ford tonight. 500,000 jobs in Ontario could be lost if Donald Trump follows through on his promise to impose devastating tariffs.
And who's in, who's out? The Liberal leadership race narrows with Christy Clark and Francois-Philippe Champagne announcing they're out. More on who's jumping in.
You're watching Live at 5. Good evening, and thank you for joining us on Live at 5. I'm Lena Latifat.
I'm Phil Perkins. Our top story. York Regional Police are marking Crime Stoppers Month by highlighting some of their top priority cases today.
Yeah, for a closer look at this, let's go live to CP24's crime analyst, Steve Ryan, who is in York Region tonight, and home invasions. That's been a real concern where you are, Steve.
Yeah, home invasions and robberies at spas up here in York Region. That are two of the crimes that York Regional Police spoke about today, and they're hoping that somebody's going to provide information through Crime Stoppers, which will help them solve these two cases. So it was 1976 when Crime Stoppers came to be. It was a Canadian-born police officer in Albuquerque, New Mexico, investigating a homicide. He had no leads. He came up with the idea of providing cash to people who provided them with accurate information. And it has been around now for almost 5 decades. And it is one of the key, I would say, tools in a law enforcement officer's tool bag. And that's because oftentimes people want to remain anonymous. They provide the information. They're given an identification number. And if, in fact, they are paid after a successful investigation, they go to a bank and the bank matches that number with their number. Nobody knows who that person is. Here's more from Chief Jim McSween. He provided information today at a press conference up in York Region, and here's what he told us. Let's listen.
In 2024, we had 3,100, so 3,153 tips received, resulting in 103 arrests and 81 cases cleared. A total of 445 charges laid last year as a result of our partnership with Crime Stoppers, and over $2.6 million in stolen property was recovered. What's more, 25 dangerous weapons were taken off York Region streets, and more than $4.5 million in drugs were seized.
1997 Supreme Court ruling said that a person who is anonymous with regards to Crime Stoppers will remain anonymous, and a defense counsel or the person accused of a crime will never get your name. That comes from the highest court in the land. So that is 100% guaranteed, and never in the history of Crime Stoppers has a person's name been known. I can tell you that for a fact. Listen back, you guys.
All right, Steve, thanks so much for this. And staying with crime that is concerning, police are investigating a smash and grab robbery at a jewelry kiosk in the East End. This is also an ongoing problem.
Yeah, on the Golden Mile Plaza, Victoria Park at Eglinton, around 3:30. Reports of suspects with hammers smashing glass at a kiosk selling jewelry. Police say an unknown number of suspects fled the scene. No word yet on any injuries.
Well, still no arrests in a hate-motivated break-and-enter in Markham.
Yeah, police say the suspects broke into a commercial unit near Yonge and Doncaster early Friday morning. They vandalized the property, causing significant damage, and also left behind anti-Semitic graffiti.
We should never, ever tolerate hate like this against any minority community, against anyone in this country. And so we need people to stand up and speak out. People should not be passive. They should not be silent. If you see anything like this, you should speak out. We need politicians to stand up. We need allies. We need people who are neighbors, friends, colleagues to speak up for their Jewish friends, neighbors, and colleagues. And we need people to see something that's happening like this vandalism, like the horrific things that were said about the Jewish community, and to actually educate each other about the anti-Semitism that is taking place in this city and the fact that there is no place for it here.
And if you recognize either of the suspects, police would like to speak with you.
And also a significant police presence at Tommy Thompson Park for a controlled detonation after explosive materials were found in a storage unit.
Police say a controlled detonation will be conducted at some point, but there is no risk to public safety. That's the big message tonight. The explosives disposal unit and hazmat team are at the park. Now, it's unclear what kind of explosive materials were found. They were discovered in a storage locker on Bermondsey Avenue this morning.
All right, it is 5:35. Let's take a look at traffic. Get you home safely and maybe quickly, Heather?
Not so quickly, actually, Phil. It's a busy drive out there on all your major routes, typical for the afternoon commute. Let's go straight to the cameras. A couple problems on the go. Looks like they're opening things up, but we had this earlier crash on the 401. Actually, it's the QEW at Appleby line. Let's bring that up here. QEW at Appleby line in Burlington. It's the left shoulder that is blocked. It was blocking the HOV lane, but it looks like they've slowly open things up. We have another issue on the 401 at Brock Road. It's the westbound on-ramp at Brock Road in Pickering, a crash block in the right lane. And right shoulder, emergency crews on scene, but it looks like traffic is getting by. And earlier issues, 401 westbound collectors at Avenue Road, a crash there has cleared. Southbound 404 DVP, wanted to bring up that camera, really seeing things jam up from south of Finch to south of York Mills, northbound Don Valley Parkway. That is jamming up from about Millwood right up to the 401. Expect quite a delay through there. Victoria Park, a much better alternate. The westbound Gardner, that is heavy from about Sherbourne to west of Bathurst. Not aware of any crashes along that stretch, just volume. That's it for traffic. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Heather. It is 5:36, feels like minus 17. You're watching Live at 5.
Coming up after the break, the latest on how much tariffs could cost Ontario. The Premier issuing a stark warning. We'll tell you more.
Welcome back to Live at 5. 500,000 jobs. That's what Premier Doug Ford says Donald Trump proposed tariffs could cost this province. He met with Federal Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc at Queen's Park today.
And that is where we find CP24's Melissa Duggan this hour. And these numbers really put things into perspective.
Yeah, Lena, to say that Monday is looming large would be an understatement big time. That, of course, is when Donald Trump is set to be inaugurated as the next president of the United States, and preparations underway here in Ontario, across Canada, ahead of that Monday. So today, Premier Doug Ford met with Federal Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc. They, of course, preparing for this threat of tariffs coming from Donald Trump, who is saying that a 25% tariff on all goods into the U.S. could be imposed potentially on the first day that he is in office. LeBlanc saying today that next week is when we should get a better idea of what this threat of tariffs could mean for the Canadian economy. Among the things he talked about with Ford today, a plan to secure the border. Here's what Ford has to say about that.
Minister LeBlanc laid out the plan. It's a fabulous plan. Let's get out there and tell the people of Canada they've worked hard on it. So what I said this morning after seeing the plan, it's a solid plan, and he's going to work, the Minister McGuinty will work hand in hand with people like Minister Kersner, our OPP, RCMP, CBSA, the U.S. Border Patrol, DEA. It's a collective, collaborative group that are going to secure our borders. But the numbers that I have seen, it's impressive, and the plan's impressive as well.
The other big thing people are talking about today, we heard from Ford earlier in the day. He said that Trump's promised tariffs on Canadian goods, that could result in the loss of 500,000 jobs in Ontario, creating the need for billions of dollars in stimulus spending. Ford said that his government would need to be forced to spend tens of billions of dollars to bolster the province in the event of those tariffs being put in place. And Ford has said a vote would be needed to take place to unlock that funding, something that, again, he alluded to again today. So that is, again, fueling speculation of a potential early election here in our province. Pushback to this possibility, though, and these potential job losses coming from the opposition, including the Liberal leader. Have a listen.
Well, I think that number is inflated, but I have a lot of confidence in Dominic LeBlanc, who will lead the effort for the federal government. And there is a role for the premiers. There's also a role for the opposition leaders. I think what the premier should be doing is calling in the opposition leaders so that we can formulate a very firm response. But we need to be calm right now. What we need is stability, not instability. We need certainty for the people of Ontario. And I know the other leaders of the opposition would like to have input into a decision so that all the premiers can feed into the federal government and we can act as Team Canada and present a united front.
Now let's talk about tomorrow. That's when Canada's premier is heading to Ottawa to meet with federal counterparts there. LeBlanc also said to be part of those talks. This is all in preparation for Monday and that threat of tariffs coming from Trump. Back to you.
All right, Melissa Duggan, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Well, speaking of Ottawa, the race to become the next federal Liberal leader has narrowed after two potential candidates announced today that they will not be entering the contest.
Let's bring in CP24's Beatrice Faisman for more on this. Let's talk about François-Philippe Champagne, prominent francophone. A lot of Liberals believe it's a loss that he's not running.
Yeah, and right now, at least, there's no clear contender who's suggesting they're going to run who is fluent in the French language. And so François-Philippe Champagne, the current industry minister, very bilingual, currently holds the riding of former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, very popular in his riding, and a lot of Quebec Liberals saying he would have had tremendous support there in La Belle Province. He was told to be considering quite seriously if he was going to be running for the Liberal leadership. Today, we heard here in Toronto at the Canadian Club, he ultimately made the announcement that he would not be doing so, instead saying that he's putting his energy elsewhere, specifically to defend Canada, to defend Canadians and Canadian businesses. So to the Francophone Liberals, this is obviously something that's quite disappointing to them. But here's a bit of what he had to say earlier this morning right here in the city.
I've been touched by colleagues who have said, we could use your leadership at this time. And I thought very carefully about that period. And I come to the conclusion that I will not be seeking to be the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada for the upcoming race. I will dedicate my energy to defend Canada, to defend Canadians, to defend Canadian businesses.
So Champagne, obviously fluent in French. English is his second language. Christy Clark, French was an issue for her. At least that's what she said in a letter to supporters put out today, saying two things. Firstly, she simply has not had enough time to mount a successful campaign, doesn't think that there's enough runway to do so. Also saying she hasn't had enough time to improve her French to where it needs to be to effectively connect with Francophone Canadians. Keep in mind, there was also a big blunder last week for Christy Clark, saying she never had a membership to the Conservative Party of Canada. She said that on the news, and then shortly thereafter, the Conservative Party said, hey, wait a minute, here's the proof. You did have a membership. She quite openly supported Jean Charest in the last Conservative Party leadership bid. So quite a foot and mouth moment for Christy Clark, who said she simply misspoke. Let's talk about who is running, because he's a big name. We've been hearing it for a while now. Former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney, who was actually poised to become the finance minister to replace Chrystia Freeland when all the chaos ensued in the nation's capital. We're now hearing that Mark Carney is set to announce his leadership intentions this Thursday in Edmonton, his hometown where he grew up, went to high school, and then ultimately went to university, Oxford, Harvard, and became the Bank of Canada governor, and later on the Bank of England governor as well. Mark Carney was on the late night shows last night, pitching himself as the best candidate. Here's a bit of that conversation.
You got to have some shared values. You got to be able to predict how the other is going to behave. So it's not just a series of transactions.
Right.
Look, we can do a series of transactions. We're fine. We're in a strong position. You want to do a series of deals? We can do that.
Yeah.
What's much better is to look at everything we've had, John, together.
But
we could just build on it.
You were just about to lean into look, man, if it's late and you're drunk, you can call us. It's cool.
Yeah,
but I would rather we mean something to each other.
Yeah.
So that we get something out of this together.
Yeah, like Sunday afternoon in the park.
That's what I'm talking about.
Two more people expected to say yes, throw their names in the ring. One, Karina Gold, not that well known, but she is the government House Leader, 37 years old, represents Burlington, says she can be a voice for young Liberals. And finally, Chrystia Freeland. Yeah, this is how we all got into this mess, I'll call it, when she resigned in haste last month. She's set to throw in her name into this race, saying she will fight the U.S. tariffs dollar for dollar with retaliation. Back to you guys.
Yeah, the woman who arguably started all this says she is in. All right, Beatrice Bateman reporting live from our newsroom. Thanks, B. Well, for a closer look at the Liberal leadership race, we're going to turn to Andrew Perez now. He's a principal at Perez Strategies and longtime Liberal strategist. Good to see you, as always, Andrew. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Great to be here.
Okay, so before we talk about who's in, I want to talk about who's out, because that list is getting longer. What does it say to you that more and more prominent Liberals are saying no thanks?
Look, I think it's a function of two factors. The first factor is nothing new. The party is lagging in the polls between 20 and 25 points now, has been behind in the polls for more than 2 years. The landscape for the Liberal Party is not good. That's an understatement. We're in an existential crisis for the party, and the next election will arguably be the toughest election that we've faced in our 157-year history. The second factor that I think has really led to so many senior cabinet ministers taking a pass is the rules. A $350,000 entry fee, it's the highest entry fee we've ever had for a leadership race in the Liberal Party. And then the expedited nature of this race. You know, candidates will only have until January 27th to sign up new members. I know that was a factor in Christy Clark's decision not to run, and the whole thing will be over within 7 weeks. So for those that aren't household names, for those that aren't Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland, it becomes a very much an uphill battle to crisscross the country and introduce yourself to Canadians and sign up new members in such a short period of time.
You know, you're, as a Liberal strategist, you see some strategy right here from Mark Carney. We're showing on our screen right now on the Daily Show yesterday. And I'll be honest, he surprised me how much charisma he had. He mentioned that he's an outsider. How much of an advantage does he have by his resume compared to, say, a Chrystia Freeland, who has that name recognition? But at the same time, the poll in public opinion might not be the greatest on her because she is this known commodity and tied to Trudeau.
Yeah, I think Carney is looking to be the early front runner in this race. Carney has two real advantages. Number one, he comes from outside the government. He's not been part and parcel of the Trudeau government over the last decade, like Chrystia Freeland. And number two, his CV, his expertise really meets the moment that we're in as a country. This is someone that led the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, two G7 countries. He was leading the Bank of Canada in the midst of the 2008-2009 global financial crisis. He's an economist by trade. He's held several roles at the UN and several other international bodies. He is a very serious-minded, qualified individual. And so I think when you add the fact that he is somewhat of an outsider, and he brings this strong economic expertise, and even on the Tonight Show, while it was a lighter show, he was able to demonstrate what he would bring to the job and what would be his priorities. And so that is going to stand him well in a race, because the Liberal Party is looking for change. Canadians, indeed, are looking for change. The ballot question in the next election, which will almost certainly be in the spring, will be change. So Mr. Carney, I think, will have an easier time signaling that change from within the Liberal Party versus Ms. Freeland, who, for all her strengths, has been, Mr. Trudeau's lieutenant for the past decade and has held every senior post imaginable in that government.
Yeah, and how do you break free from that image? Yeah. Andrew Perez, principal at Perez Strategies and Liberal Strategist. Thanks so much for your insights. Appreciate your perspective.
Thank you both. Take care.
You too.
All right, it is 5:51 right now, minus 17. Feels like outside. You're watching Live at 5.
Coming up, the latest on ceasefire talks in the Israel-Hamas war. We'll take you to the Middle East. Well, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas is right on the brink, closer than it's ever been before. Blinken was speaking in Washington today.
I believe we will get a ceasefire. And whether we get there in the remaining days of our administration or after January 20th, I believe the deal will follow closely the terms of the agreement that President Biden put forward last May and our administration rallied the world behind.
Qatar is hosting the talks and also indicates that Israel and Hamas are at a closest point yet to agreeing on a ceasefire and the release of dozens of hostages. Two officials involved in the talks have told the Associated Press that Hamas has accepted a draft agreement, but Qatar is still tempering expectations.
We again say and call on both parties to seriously engage in the negotiations, which is happening right now. And we do applaud the fact that the negotiations are taking place, but we also, are urging both sides to end this now and sign the agreement as soon as possible, so the people in Gaza can have the respite that they need, and both the hostages and prisoners can get back to their families, and life in this region and stability in this region can have a moment of clarity that is much needed.
And an Israeli official says progress has been made, but the details are still being finalized.
The issue right now about the hostages, they are being discussed right now with the delegations from all parties in Qatar, and we are really hoping and hearing good news.
And a ceasefire deal may be close, but the war rages on. Palestinian health officials say Israeli strikes in the Gaza Strip killed at least 18 people earlier today, including women and children.
It's 5:56 minus 8. You're watching Live at 5.
When we come back, the Princess of Wales says her cancer is in remission. Coming up, we'll have more on her visit today to the London hospital where she received her treatment. Welcome back to Live at 5. Great news. The Princess of Wales says her cancer is in remission.
Yeah, great news indeed. She made the announcement following a visit to the London hospital where she received treatment. Kensington Palace says Kate wanted to personally thank the medical team for their care and to offer support to patients currently undergoing treatment. I mean, anybody who's been touched by this awful disease knows just how tough chemotherapy is. Good to see her back on her feet, smiling, and she looks well.
Yeah, and for those dealing with it there, they know it happens to anybody.
Yeah.
And they feel like they have her support, no doubt.
And there is hope, as you can see right there.
Yeah.
5:59 minus 8. This is Toronto's breaking news, CP24.
Thanks for watching. CTV News at 6 is next.